Saying goodbye to the strange and surreal summer of 2020. Facebook moves to get ahead of election chaos, and love hate 8 ahead of the long holiday weekend. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Friday, September 4th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. September's cruising right along, Carlo.
It is. You hear those storms last night? We got some
Oh, I
serious rain.
did. Actually,
It's
I
funny. I
didn't
was,
hear them, but I have my earplugs in, and my dog heard them and woke me up.
shocking. I just wanted to say we got a car this summer, and now whenever it rains, I get this like anxiety attack because I'm like, oh my God, did I leave the windows down? Is that something I don't know if that's like, does that go away at some point? I don't know.
Um, we have a Jeep Wrangler that you could take the top off. So my
Oh God,
husband
yeah.
has had like permanent anxiety about that. Um, okay, let's get to the news. This long hot summer comes to an official close this weekend. While the weather across a big part of the country is looking great for a holiday weekend, California is about to see another serious heat wave that threatens to undo the process that firefighters have made in containing wildfires. Los Angeles could see record-breaking temperatures with the high on Sunday expected to reach 106 degrees. In the Midwest, Dr. Fauci warning people to be especially vigilant given the spike in coronavirus cases across 4 states in particular: Iowa, Kansas, and the Dakotas.
Yeah, remember, I mean, both Memorial Day and the July 4th weekends this year were responsible for seeding outbreaks. We can now see in retrospect, right? Memorial Day came just as states started to reopen. So a lot of those states saw previously moderate outbreaks then start to spread. And then the 4th this year, which felt like it was last week, that came just before this, absolute huge spike, right? That we're just now starting to see level off. That being said, though, we shouldn't forget we're still losing almost 1,000 people a day to this virus based on the 7-day moving average. It feels like it's sort of like gotten out of the headlines, but we should not forget that.
I believe we're at about 185,000 Americans
Hmm.
and counting.
Yep.
In places where there is contact tracing, it shows that a big percentage of people who get the virus get it from even small family gatherings and from people that they know, and even outdoor events and parties outdoors, even barbecues. So I think many of us, me included, have kind of thought outdoors okay, but it just shows you still have to be careful.
Totally.
Breaking overnight, the Antifa supporter who was suspected in the killing of a member of the pro Trump caravan during violent protests last weekend was himself shot and killed by police as they attempted to arrest him. Officials say the suspect, Michael Reinhold, was armed as they moved to apprehend him. Not much more, though, is known at this hour.
Yeah, this happening in Portland. I forgot to mention. There's been so many of these incidents; it's almost hard to keep track. But this was the big Portland protest, the Trump caravan, the violence from last Saturday, I believe. So this guy Reinhold, he had given an interview with Vice News earlier in the day yesterday, in which he essentially admitted to killing that person, whose name is Jay Danielson. He said it was in self-defense. He didn't have a choice. There is video, and it doesn't really make it very clear one way or another what happened. But I was thinking about this last night. Like the whole thing, what a just unbelievable waste, just of human life and everything. Like, did either of these guys? What were they even protesting? What were they even really fighting for? Right? Like the stuff in Portland, in particular, stopped being about any one cause months ago. Right? Like this was not really like a Black Lives Matter protest anymore, or like then the Trump supporters come in and then they're just like you just have like Americans killing each other in the streets for no reason. It's just it's really it's really a bummer. And obviously not to the other thing that gets lost in these stories is the gun issue, right? You have all these people who hate each other who are just like walking around packing heat. Like these are the things that are going to happen when we have a country that is armed to the teeth. And in the same way, not to let that kid off the hook in Kenosha. Rittenhouse with the assault rifle who killed those two protesters. But it's just like this is just this kind of like volatility and fanning of the flames from the highest levels, and then you put that all together with the guns. It's just like a recipe for disaster, right?
And gun applications, this is a story we haven't really discussed, but gun applications and gun sales are through the roof
Yeah.
just in the past few months. Also in Rochester, the mayor in that upstate New York city, he has suspended 7 police officers that were involved in the death of Daniel Prude, who is the black man who was suffocated to death after police put a hood over his head and pressed his face into the pavement. This was during an incident in March. The mayor said that she was misled by the city's police chief, who told her that Prude died of a drug overdose while in custody. The medical examiner saying that he died as well from asphyxiation, and drugs were a contributing factor. The police department here, they are saying this was not a cover up. They say they've been investigating this incident since it happened. As for why the officers put a hood on this man's head, they say Prude told them that he had coronavirus, and he kept spitting. So that was why they said that they needed
Right.
to use a hood. Moving on now to a story that is rocking Washington. President Trump has angrily and forcefully denied a report in The Atlantic that cited several anonymous sources who claim that he referred to American soldiers who died in World War I as, quote, losers and suckers, and that he once refused to visit a military cemetery because he thought that the rain would mess up his hair. Quoting from The Atlantic, in a conversation with senior staff members on the morning of the scheduled visit to this American cemetery near Paris, Trump said, "Why should I go to that cemetery? It's filled with losers." The president, meanwhile, spoke to reporters last night after a campaign event in Pennsylvania, and he said, "I would be willing to swear on anything that I never said that about our fallen heroes. There's nobody that respects them more." That Atlantic story is written by its editor-in-chief. It has upended DC with less than 2 months until Election Day.
It's certainly what everyone's talking about today. But our former editor-in-chief, Jim Roberts, God bless him, I love that guy. He tweeted last night that this story is going to be hugely influential in November. And it's like, I love you, Jim, but it's not. It won't. The story will be forgotten by the weekend. That's just, we've seen these stories, a million times in the last 4 years. These like egregious things that the president has allegedly done or said, especially when you have anonymous sources. Like, there's nobody to call and confirm. There's nobody to go on the record on TV and say it. So it'll just sort of like recede back into our our minds by the end of the weekend. That being said, it's a story that is worth reading, and I'll link to it in the newsletter today if you haven't read it yet.
So there are a lot of calls right now for whomever was the source for this to come forward, because this, I don't know.
They should.
Something about this is so egregious that there's people who say whoever heard this really does need to come forward and go on camera or just go on the record with it. But to your point, just about this being forgotten by the weekend, we were having a little bit of chit chat right before the podcast, and you said I had to put, I need to put this Trump story in because, it really is making waves on social media. I actually thought you were referring to the president encouraging people in North Carolina to vote twice, first by mail,
we didn't
and
even
then
mention
in
that
person, which we didn't even discuss. So I kind of agree with you. I just think that there's so much out there that it's like we can't even be shocked anymore. Our political landscape it's the next level, right? Like nothing even matters in politics anymore because
so glad you said that. Because I was kicking myself yesterday because I was like, I can't believe the president of the United States essentially called for voter fraud 2 nights ago for his supporters to vote twice in North Carolina. And I didn't put it in the newsletter. We didn't even talk about it on the podcast. It just sort of was out. I mean, if that happened, I hate to do the whole imagine if Obama did that, but that would be the only thing we'd be talking about for a week. It just goes to show you how exactly what you said. The entire landscape has been completely decimated, right?
I mean, there's major books that we don't even mention. There's a new book about Melania from one of her close aides, but it's like there's just too much, and the claims are so nuts that you almost just can't even talk about it. I do want to talk about Facebook though, and what they're trying to do to make sure the election goes off smoothly. They're going to be banning all new political advertising during the week before election day. So this is an attempt to suppress misinformation and interference from President Trump or whomever else. The social network also going to be taking down posts that try to dissuade people from voting, and they're flagging posts from any candidate claiming a premature victory. It's one of the most proactive steps that Facebook's taken ahead of the election.
Yeah, wow, a whole week. I mean, talk about literally the least you can do. My feelings on Facebook, I think, are pretty well established at this point. But has anybody ever asked why it is that Mark Zuckerberg, who, a white guy in his mid-30s who grew up in the New York City suburbs, exactly like me, by the way, has so much power and influence over American democracy? Look, Facebook is his company. He controls the board. It's not like he's doing anything illegal, right? Like he's obviously a brilliant person who essentially single-handedly built like an incredibly innovative American company, and I respect that. But it's just something rubs me the wrong way about how much power he specifically has. And frankly, I don't think he's up to the task, right? I don't think any really one person is up to the task of running this company. It's just too big, right? It's way too powerful. It's now the biggest platform in the world by any stretch, and it doesn't feel like the people who work there actually understand the responsibility that goes along with that.
I do want to mention Facebook is taking one other step that it's not getting as much attention as the ban on ads the week ahead of the election. According to our former colleague Alex Heath over at The Information, Facebook's going to be limiting the number of people to whom users can forward private messages to. So it's going to be to 5 from the current limit, which is 150. Facebook owns
Huh.
WhatsApp, and WhatsApp did something similar to try to tackle the spread of hoaxes and other harmful content. And according to Alex Heath, it resulted in a 25% drop in forwarded messages globally. So
I hadn't
we've
seen that.
focused
That's
on this
yeah.
other ban, yeah, but it's pretty interesting.
No, it is. I mean, because these are, this is sort of, this is like remember like chain letters back in the day, like when like your, crazy crazy uncle
If
or
you break
yeah,
this
yeah,
chain, you'll have bad luck for
yeah,
100
yeah, yeah, yeah.
years.
Right. That's sort of, I mean, the new version of that is people sending, these like basically spammy WhatsApp or Facebook messages. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I hadn't even seen it, but that could probably do more to stop the spread of misinformation than anything else.
Let's talk about the markets. Stocks had their worst day since June yesterday. The S&P dropped 3.5%. The tech-heavy Nasdaq sunk 5%. The market's been on a tear, though, led by tech stocks, which took the brunt of the selling. Apple and Tesla were down 8 and 9%, respectively. This is one of those sell-offs in which nothing really happened to trigger it. I think investors probably just took some profits here.
Yeah, and I think we've said this before, but one of my biggest pet peeves with market stories in the news is when it's like, something the market goes up by a million points or down, and everyone's like, it happened for this reason. Like nobody really knows. I mean, sometimes it's obvious, right? Sometimes there's some piece of economic data that comes out, or something happens in the world, and it's obvious why stocks move. But a lot of the times it isn't really. Like it just kind of happens, and this was one of those times. Meanwhile, the August jobs report, Jill, that will come out this morning. We will be covering that on Cheddar in a couple hours from now. The number is expected to show a gain of 1.2 million jobs. That would be below the 1.8 million in July and the 4.8 million in June. The official unemployment rate expected to dip just below 10%. But it feels. I mean, we'll see in a couple hours, but it feels like the hiring situation is not recovering the way I think we would have hoped a few months ago.
But to put that below 10% in perspective, it's not quite as bad as we were, right? We were
Sure.
as high as I think
Oh no,
15%.
we're
But
better. Yeah, yeah.
but the Great Recession, the financial crisis in 2008, the peak of unemployment was about 9%. So
Yeah.
when we talk about just figuring, putting this a bit into perspective, we are still in a very dire situation. I think 1 in 5 American workers is getting some sort of government help right now in the form of unemployment benefits. The numbers are staggering. And I think I'm glad you mentioned that, we in the media are very guilty of trying to attribute any sort of sell off or
Like a
buying
rally.
or rally to something. And it's funny, we always talk, the jobs report is usually something that really does move the markets. But I've talked to analysts all day on Cheddar. And they really say this time around, because of what the Fed is doing, which is just pumping so much stimulus to boost up
Yep.
the stock market and try and help the economy, it's so detached, right? The market, like investors don't totally care. According to almost every analyst that I've spoken with, the jobs report isn't what's going to be moving the markets. It's what Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, says about interest rates. It's a stimulus package. That if a stimulus package didn't pass, that would really move the markets. But
You're right.
we love to attribute it to something, but sometimes it's not that.
Well, the other thing, Jill, quickly is, the market is not heavily weighted towards the industries that are really in trouble right now, right? I mean, obviously, like there are, restaurant groups that are listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and there are hotel chains. But it's much more heavily weighted towards tech and towards financials and towards energy companies. So it doesn't really give a sense of where the most hurt in this country is right now, which is in hospitality industries and service industries and retail. So I mean, I just think that it doesn't really tell you what's actually going on. If you look on the website Indeed.com to show you where jobs are right now, I mean, they're showing that, jobs in the hospitality sector are down, 40-50%. Job listings, even in like the banking sectors, are down. Like it's remarkable.
Right. And the other thing is too, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, but as more mom and pop stores and local smaller stores close and cannot survive this, then people are forced to shop at these bigger
Yep.
box stores. And many of those are publicly traded. So, Main Street's losses are in some ways Wall Street's gains.
Totally.
So again, a total disconnect between what's going on Wall Street and what's actually happening in America, across this country, on main streets and in communities.
Yep.
Let's switch gears and talk about the entertainment beat right now. 3 days after it resumed production, the Batman has once again shut down after Robert Pattinson, Batman himself, reportedly tested positive for COVID-19. About a quarter of the film is said to be in the can. It's still on schedule for a late 2021 release.
Jill, that's what he gets for wearing the mask that only covers the nose, right? The Batman mask. You gotta. So
Cute.
dumb. Sorry. Yeah. My buddy who loves DC and comic book movies. He texted me this yesterday. He's like, "Can anything go right this year? We can't even get Batman on track." But thoughts and prayers for Robert Pattinson. Hopefully he recovers and they can get that movie going again.
Speaking of movies, normally this is a pretty big weekend for Hollywood, although this year, of course, it's anything but normal. Still, a finally at long last opening weekend for Tenet in U.S. theaters, which coincidentally also stars Robert Pattinson back when he was pre-COVID days. Mulan, as well, the biggest live action movie of the year, is going straight to streaming. That premieres on Disney Plus today. To watch it, you're going to need to be paying a paying Disney Plus subscriber. So, and then on top of that, you're going to have to pay another $30 for Mulan.
I think we've said this before, Jill, but I think you could charge $300 for this movie, and every parent in America wouldn't even think twice if it meant, shut the kids up for a couple hours on a Friday night, right? But yeah, Mulan getting good reviews. And it will actually be interesting on from the business angle, just to see how well it does. We haven't really had a movie this big do the straight to streaming thing before. So this will be a real test to see, can you make $100 or $200 million movie and recoup the costs without counting on movie theaters. If the answer to that is yes, that's a very bad sign for the movie theater industry.
Yeah, I mean, and look, it's a different demographic that these movies are
Sure.
targeting. And I think parents, well, at first I heard $30 and I'm like, $30. I mean, that is in most cases 3 times a movie ticket. However, when you think usually a parent would have to take their kid to the movies and maybe they
Yep.
have more than one kid. So it kind of evens out, and then you have this movie. So you can keep watching it a million times.
Yeah.
All right, let's finish this off with a little bit of Love Hate 8 holiday weekend edition.
Okay.
Carlo, kick it off.
All right. One thing we love, the first chill in the air. right around now. Usually in the morning. It's usually right around Labor Day, though. I felt this last Saturday was the first one I felt. It's like the first. It doesn't even have to be a chill. It's just like the first feeling in the morning that the fall is on the way. I just always love that because I happen to love fall. 2 words: hoodie season.
I love fall also, normally.
It's
One
never
thing that
long.
we hate. Oh, fall? Yeah, it's like you
Yeah,
get 3 weeks maybe of
yeah, that's
great fall weather, and then it's just winter. One thing that we hate, the end of summer and it's warm weather, um, which kind of made the pandemic somewhat tolerable. Outdoor dining, social distancing, barbecues, highly chlorinated pools, all the things that sort of made you feel okay
yeah,
about having us, our current situation. That's going to come to an end, and a lot of the stuff that we love about fall isn't really going to happen. I'm thinking
that's true.
Big Ten football, crazy Halloween parties,
Yeah,
a lot of
this
other
is
stuff.
usually when the good Oscar movies come out.
Oh, yeah.
Um, Yeah, the World Series, which I love to watch, is going to be like totally unwatchable this year, probably. Okay, finally, one thing we ate a big, delicious chunk of gorgonzola cheese. I'm on a major gorgonzola kick right now, and it's so good. But anyway, I got this big chunk of gorgonzola from Murray's, which is this New York City cheese institution. That's delicious, and it's a great gift idea, by the way. And you also get to help out a struggling New York small business. They deliver nationwide. It's if you're struggling to find something to give somebody, send them a hunk of gorgonzola from Murray's. I guarantee it'll be a hit. And I'm not trying to like
Tell them
judge
tell
them
them
up.
Carlos sent you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'll take a cut from that Murray's. No, seriously, they're a great they're a classic New York small business, and we got to support them.
Um, okay. A little housekeeping. We are off Monday, of course, because it's Labor Day. I hope everyone has a nice long weekend. And I'm out next week. I'm
You
moving,
guys going anywhere?
hopefully.
Oh, you're
No, we
moving.
are, yeah, we're moving, and my daughter
God.
starts a twos program. So we have just a
Big
lot of
week in the
life
Wagner
stuff to deal
household.
with.
Yeah.
It is.
All right. Well, I'll hold down the fort. We'll see. We'll see if I get Baker some days, maybe. Hopefully, I don't have to do it myself. But yeah, good luck, Jill. You deserve a few days off, and we'll see
Thank
you on the
you.
flip side.
All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. That's what you need to know for Friday, September 4th.
Safe, everybody.